As I type this down, I'm too scared to move. I can see it in the reflection. Every time I turn to look at it, it's gone. I don't know what or who it is. All I know is that it's getting closer. It whispers threats to me. I need to get out. I can't see where it is. It's just out of sight. All of this started when I decided I needed to get out into nature more. Growing up in Michigan, getting into nature meant going hunting or fishing. My dad and I used to go hunting at every chance we got. It was a perfect combination. He was retired and I was a homeschool high schooler. We had no schedule to keep to. We would go to the UP for bear hunting, the west side of the state for turkey hunting, and to northeastern Michigan for deer hunting. I really missed that, and I missed my dad. I was born later in life for my parents. My dad was 58 when I was born, and my mother, his second wife, was 36. I used to get made fun of for my parents' age gap. I never thought it was strange. My mom wasn't some 19 years old dating a 45-year-old. My mom was already in her 30s. When I was born, people assumed my dad was my grandpa. As I grew older, I got tired of trying to explain the situation, so I usually just went along with it. I loved having an older father. He was retired and always had time for me. When I was 19, my mom passed away of uterine cancer, and my dad couldn't handle the grief. He died only a couple years later. A combination of age and grief. As a young man, I immediately had to forego any form of higher education and jump straight into work. I inherited a house that needed to be paid for. I made it work, but it wasn't easy. The idea of having time to go hunting was all but a dream for me now. I always wanted to get back out there. I craved the call of the woods. It's where my dad and I had our best conversations. So this year, 3 years after my father's death, I'd managed to get the time to go out. I'd requested all 40 hours of my vacation time off for opening deer season. So on November 15th, I headed out to Huron National Forest with my lever action Marlin 30-30, a 2-person tent, my little pit bull mix Maisie, and my dad's old 2004 Chevy Silverado. I had a week to myself and a deer tag to fill. The day before, my girlfriend Clara came over. She was going to watch the house while I was gone. We had dinner and went to bed. During the night, she began to talk in her sleep. It was mostly gibberish. She often did this at night, but it was the last thing she said that shook me. "Clara, you're going to die out there." I sat up and shook her awake. I told her what she had said, and she told me that she had a terrible dream. She said that while I was out hunting, a bear had gotten a hold of me. I assured her that I'd be fine. Michigan black bears are basically giant raccoons. They usually leave people alone as long as your campsite is clean and the food is out of reach. After that, we went back to sleep, and the next morning I left. I should have listened to her. I should have just hunted behind the house. The next morning at around 5 a.m., I hopped on I-75 and headed north. My lazy Maisie slept the whole way, which was completely normal. The ride was uneventful. I stopped for breakfast at McDonald's and had myself their mediocre breakfast burritos and a hash brown. Maisie woke up only for this, and she happily received a good girl hash brown. When I got to the campsite that I had registered, I let Maisie out and she gleefully tramped around. She was loving the new smells and sounds that she got to experience for the first time. Then, out of nowhere, she started looking downhill and whimpering. Not like a scared dog, but rather more like a dog who's overly excited. I looked where she was looking, and I saw a lean-to. I'm not stupid. I immediately got us back in the car and drove away. I got on my phone and checked to see if there were any other campsites open for registering. Thankfully, there were. I chose one that was another 5 miles into the forest north of the first campsite. I'd watched enough horror movies to know that you don't mess with random forest structures. I'm sure that it was just some fort that was built by some kids who were out on a camping trip with their parents, but after what Clara said, I wasn't taking any chances. Campsite number 2 was much better anyways. It was sitting on top of a hill, so if it rained, I'd remain mostly dry. Maisie liked this site better as well. She was much more relaxed at this campsite. I even had better cell service. I had 3 bars of 4G. Not the best, but I could call and text with a little delay. The first night was mostly just Maisie and I loafing around and recovering from our drive. It was a solid 6 hours from home. It wasn't until that night that things started to get strange. I had lit a fire and was roasting marshmallows over it. I cracked open a couple cans of dog food for Maisie, but she had very little interest. The absolute darkness of the woods was freaking her out. She kept jumping at every tree branch that fell, every raccoon that chittered in the distance, and every other generic forest sound that you can think of. Then the big one happened. Just out of the reach of the fire's warm glow, off to my left, there was a twig snap. When I jerked my head over to look where the sound emanated from, for a split second, I thought I saw someone. It scared me, but once my eyes adjusted, I realized that it was just an afterimage of the fire. I thought it was crazy how much it looked like a person, but it moved with my eyes, so I wrote it off. Then we crawled into the tent for bed. The next morning, I put the leash on Maisie, sprayed her and myself down with scent-killing spray, and we headed out for the hunt. The fallen leaves were all wet from the previous night's rain and morning dew. Most of the ground was covered with moss as well, so walking without a sound was surprisingly easy. I saw a big tree in the middle of a clearing. I pulled out my binoculars to take a closer look. It was a big old oak tree. The ground beneath it was just loaded with acorns, and there were very distinct buck rubs on the trunk. I decided that this would be a perfect place to set up. We got a little closer to make aiming easier for my peep sight, and we settled in. A few deer walked by, but I didn't want to end my hunting trip on day 1, so I kept waiting for the perfect buck to walk through, even though I had a combination tag. That was when the absolute perfect buck rolled in. He must have been the one who was rubbing the tree. His rack must have had 12 points on it. I pulled up my gun to shoot, but something spooked him and he bolted out of there. Through my limited vision as a combination of the low light and the peep sight, I saw something running on all 4s after the buck. It looked like a man on all 4s running like a dog. I pulled out the binoculars again, but by the time I looked through them, it was gone. I looked at Maisie and she didn't seem bothered. I guess that it must have been a coyote or something, and that my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. The next couple days only got worse. On my 5th day out, I bagged the buck. It was in fact a 12 point. I field dressed it, let Maisie snack on some of the more unappealing parts, and dragged it back to camp. Thankfully, I was smart enough to bring my dad's old igloo, chest cooler, and a sizable chunk of dry ice. After I pieced the deer out, I was putting everything into the cooler. That was when I saw it again. Just over the top of the open cooler hatch, I saw a vaguely human-shaped dart across the clearing. It was maybe 20 yards away. When I looked up, it was gone. That was enough for me. I got my deer, I'd enjoyed nature, and nature said it's time to go. I loaded everything up and left at around noon. While driving down the 2-track, I looked into the woods and saw a lean-to just like the one I saw the first day. The only difference was that this one was new. Every time I drove past a grove of trees on the way home, I swear I saw someone standing in the trees. Whenever I tried to focus, the figure would be gone. At this point, I realized that this wasn't some kind of illusion. I was truly seeing this being. Maybe it was a person. My rational side said that it must have been. But the fearful side immediately began coming up with supernatural explanations. All I knew for sure was that I was being followed. When I got home, Clara had already gone to work, so I rushed in, locked all the doors, closed all the blinds, and nailed bed sheets and towels to all the windows that didn't have blinds. Every gun I had in the house, a 9mm, a 20 gauge over and under, a 12 gauge pump action, and my 30-30 was then brought into my bedroom. I then called Clara and told her what was happening. Clara, wait, so someone is stalking you? Me? Someone or something? I'm not sure yet. It's not safe for you here. You just need to go home. I love you. Clara, why, Dash? I hung up before she could answer. I needed her to stay safe. I thought that my home was safe for me. The locks are solid and the doors are all metal. I was wrong. On night one of being home, I heard whispers right outside of my bedroom window. Creature, you stole from me. Silence. Creature, give it back to me. I had no idea what it wanted. Was it the deer? I then heard aggressive scratching on the vinyl siding. It sounded like it was trying to dig through the wall. I threw open the blinds with my 20 gauge drawn, but when I looked out the window, it wasn't there. There wasn't any evidence that anything had been there. No gouges on the siding or footprints in the snow under my window. Thankfully, I didn't have to go to work the next day. I still had 2 days of vacation left. I just sat in my home listening to the quiet crunching of feet on snow, the whispers, over and over and over. Every now and then it would test the doorknobs. They would jiggle and the door frame would shake. For the time being, the doors were holding. At around 7 p.m., I was laying in bed when I heard the front door unlock. Then I heard it open. Then I heard the intruder run into some glass bottles I tied on strings. And I heard the whispers. Barrett? What the heck? Where are you? I grabbed my gun, sent up a quick prayer, and slowly opened my bedroom door. Barrett. I turned on the flashlight that I had duct taped to the barrel of my shotgun. I screamed and threatened to shoot, but instead of a bent-over creature, I saw Clara. Clara, Barrett. It's me. It's me. Please just put the gun down. We both began to cry, and I recounted the events of this week. She was hesitant to believe me, but the state I was in caused her to at least be concerned for me and my well-being. She told me to take a shower and that she'd keep watching for me. I thanked her and hopped in the shower. When I got out, I saw that she had brought me my favorite meal from the local Thai joint, spicy drunken noodles. After we ate, I felt so much better. She kissed me, and she went to bed. I then took the deer meat and the head back outside. I placed it back in the cooler and left it on the porch. I thought maybe this is what it wanted. That brings us to now. I'm sitting here at my kitchen table, typing this down. Clara forgot to lock the front door, and I fell asleep at the table. I woke up to her massaging my shoulders, except I can hear her snoring in my bedroom. The buck's head is sitting on my table looking at me. Maisie is laying on the table. She's been field dressed and beheaded. In the reflection of their eyes, I can see it. It's just out of sight.